Hi, my name is Darya Duma, and you're listening to Tools of the Trade podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Tools of the Trade podcast, your number one construction industry resource. Hear conversations with industry professionals to get the tools, stories, and advice that you need to set your career on fire. You're now streaming the Tools of the Trade podcast.
What's up, guys? Thank you for taking a break from these uncertain, pandemic, panicky, frustrating, and scary times to be with me here today for another episode of Tools of the Trade. I'm your host, Colin Toop, and as always, it is my mission to provide you the stories you want and the actionable tools and tactics that you need from construction industry professionals. And today, I have a very exciting announcement to make. Tools of the Trade has officially teamed up with Noor and her organization at Build a Dream. Our combined mission is to not only help spread the word and generate interest in skilled trades as a whole, but to also encourage and empower women and underrepresented groups to explore careers in construction, sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Together, we hope we can influence a generation and fight the good fight in raising awareness and providing creative solutions to solving our skilled trades shortages. A while ago, I actually recorded an episode with Noor. It's episode number 10, where she tells her story, and she is an incredible woman, and she is doing some really amazing things for our industry, our sisters, our mothers, and our daughters. To listen to our conversation, head over to toolspodcast.com/buildadream or tune into episode number 10 from your podcast app, and also stay tuned for a message from her before this episode starts. And with all that being said, it is still Project Management Month, and I have a super fun and engaging episode for you this week with a woman by the name of Darya Duma. Darya is a mechanical engineer turned project management trainer who holds certificates in Prince 2 and PMP. Darya gives us her thoughts on deploying the trial by fire approach to hiring project managers, the fundamental skills that most PMs need to focus on, designations, and tools that you can implement right now into your career managing any type of project. For more information on previous guests, blog posts, and tools of the trade, head over to toolspodcast.com. And if you enjoyed this episode with Darya, why not leave us a review and rating on your favorite podcast app? It really helps others find and enjoy this show, and that's all I want to do is share my passion for this amazing construction industry. And now, here is a word from the president and founder of Build a Dream, Noor Hashim.
Hey guys, this is Noor Hashim, president and founder of Build a Dream. At Build a Dream, we believe there is value in highlighting all role models. Profiling females in industry demonstrates that these are attainable goals and allows other young women to imagine themselves in similar careers. Sharing insight, barriers, and success is vital to influencing the future workforce. Build a Dream is absolutely honored to present today's Women in Industry on Tools of the Trade. For more information, please visit our website at www.webuildadream.com. Let's get right into the episode.
Darya, thank you so much for coming down to what I've kind of been calling the pod couch for a glass of wine and a chat about project management. I'm really happy you're here, and we have a lot of ground to cover about the industry and the state of project management, but I felt that the best place to start this interview, as I do with most interviews, is to just get you to tell me what your role is today and what your day-to-day looks like.
My day-to-day is hard to describe because every day is different. I am now the owner of my own small little company that does training and consulting and project management. But most of my work is for a company called Procept Associates, who has been in the business since 1989 and has expanded to include training in all sorts of other areas as well, such as business analysis and leadership and coaching and so on and so forth. My day-to-day, I go to an awful lot of different clients all around Canada, mostly. So if I'm with a client, then it's up very early in the morning and it's making a presentation all day in front of a client. On the other hand, if I'm not with a client, then I'm usually working from home and on the phone a lot and on email a lot and teleconferences a lot and reading a lot and just keeping myself busy and current with my industry.
So with Procept, you're a trainer, and I've received some first-class training from you at my company, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was very insightful as kind of a good high-level couple-day overview of project management. But you have your own small consulting company. So when you're going to meet with these other companies across Canada, is that to provide consulting for project management on specific projects, or?
Mostly what I do when I do consulting work is coach on developing a project plan, for example, developing a project schedule, developing a work breakdown structure, risk management. So, usually in the front end of a project, every once in a while, I have gone in with my colleagues to rescue a project in trouble, so to speak, press the reset button. We've also done project audits. When it's bigger stuff, I usually do it with Procept because they have the insurance and they have other colleagues I can coordinate with. The stuff I do under my own name is usually little stuff that with organizations that probably can't afford Procept rates. So non-for-profits and pro bono work, a lot of pro bono work, and just to improve their practices. I also work for some of the universities. I've done some teaching in their master's programs, in their bachelor's of engineering programs on project management. But the big stuff I do through Procept. And that's developing project management methodologies. I shouldn't neglect that. That's a big part of what we do. Project management processes, coaching organizations to develop a governance framework for their projects and anything related to that, really.
Awesome. So obviously, we're going to get to the question of designations that other people should go for. And in doing research on yourself, you have quite a few designations and you've had quite an educational journey. So just walk me through kind of how things started for you after high school that carved the path towards project management. And then we'll jump into a little bit of how you came up in your career. But I want to know kind of what sparked the flame to get into engineering and to get into project management and to acquire these designations.
I was originally going to be a teacher, probably elementary school. And when I got to high school, that flame went out. And I wanted to do something really interesting in my life. And I saw this stuff. What really sparked it, I know it sounds silly, but the space shuttle program.
Really?
And space, and we were all on fire back then about space and aliens and all this other stuff. So that's really what drove me. And I went into mechanical engineering because it seemed to be the only route, the only path to get there. Really what was exciting me, and I had no idea at the time because it wasn't a thing. Projects were exciting. I found projects very exciting. New technology, new ways of doing things, teamwork, working together as a unit to get a main objective done. And of course, contributing to the public good. You're always very idealistic when you're in high school.
Yeah.
So that's what inspired me to go for engineering, in particular mechanical engineering. And the flame of being involved in something new and exciting and interesting and has never gone out. So that's kind of eventually navigated my path through project management. But it certainly was not really spoken about when I went to high school that was actually a career path.
Right.
In fact, even when you went into engineering, especially where I graduated from, which was Western, the path was very much you're going to go work for a big company like GM or Ford or 3M or Hydro was a big, there was a little bit talk of Bruce Power. We went for a couple of tours. That got me kind of excited as well, but didn't seem to be an avenue to go there.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was still part of Ontario Hydro. So, I never really recognized that as sort of a new technology at the time it was, a type path. But so went to mechanical. I didn't like automotive. I spent a term working for automotive. Sorry, with all due respect to automotive. Lovely stuff, but not my cup of tea.
Not for you.
Which was funny because I thought, all the way through school, I was Society of Automotive Engineers. I was the chairperson or president or whatever of their chapter. I organized tons of activities. I was into cars big time. I started the super mileage vehicle program at Western. Again, projects, because it was a project. Not because it was about cars, but because it was a project. I didn't even realize that the reason I wanted to do this was because it was a project.
It was underlying.
That was what was driving me. So, and then I didn't want to go into automotive after all this push towards mechanical. And I discovered when I went for interviews and worked that term for an automotive company that, this isn't really for me. So then I went to elevators, of all things. So, when I left school, I thought I never wanted to write another exam again as long as I lived. My professors were actually encouraging me to go for graduate degrees, and I just Not a chance. I was so fed up with school by the time I graduated. So fed up. So then I wrote my PN, and really what it was, again, was a fear of writing exams. So I got over that, and then I started going for these certifications. I found, hey, it's not as terrifying as it all seems. And you have to, as a project person, um, especially if you're in consulting and training, keep current with the industry. So without those certifications, you stagnate.
Right. So what came first for you after you said you made your way into elevators, and I know that story a little bit, but did you get your project management designations before getting into elevators, or
Oh,
was it
no.
vice versa?
No, not at all. And actually, it was when I joined Procept, because although I knew about PMP, I started teaching back in 1995 at Sheridan College, who were starting off this project management continuing education program. Thank you, Michael Leffler. I always owe you for this. And he decided to take a chance on me. I was looking for a different path. Really, what was happening is I was burning the candle at both ends. And this, at the time, was quite common, especially for women. When we graduated, we were told that we could have it all. We could work, we could have a social life, we could do everything. Anyways, we quickly found out that we could have a family, everything. And of course, we quickly found out that that was not possible. So something had to give. So I was working as a project manager for an elevator company, Alamac, and then I went to work for Canadian Standards Association, and I was finding it increasingly tough to juggle family and work. So my original thought was that I would go into teaching at colleges or continuing education so that I wouldn't have to work full time. That was my initial thought. I ended up working more than full time. So PMP, back to PMP. I don't like writing exams. As I mentioned, I wrote the PN and I went, thank goodness, got that one over with. But then when I joined Procept, my manager, Keith Farndale, basically told me either you write the PMP or you don't have a job in 6 months. So I dived in and ended up with pretty decent results at the time. They still gave how much you scored, and it was a pretty good result. And I shocked myself with the result. So it was well after elevators. The elevator industry wasn't that interested in PMP at the time that I was there anyways. I don't know if it's changed.
So at the elevator industry, what was your position like there, and how were you trained to manage projects? Was it something that you picked up on your own and developed your own style, or were you taught by a mentor?
No, it was definitely accidental. It's quite common among people of my age group that they will typically say I was the accidental project manager. When I started, I was not in projects at all, but I was part of big projects, and that was kind of exciting. The job was tediously boring. Checking specifications and writing specs and checking drawings and checking specs. It was, do 2 years of that and your eyes will cross over. Did teach me how to write, though. But Alamac, it was basically, you're the project engineer. We need a project engineer. I actually confessed to my boss, I think in the second interview, I don't know anything about project engineering, and I don't know anything about elevators. Even though I was in consulting, and I really didn't. I knew how to pick him out on a drawing. That's about it.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, that's okay, you'll learn. Okay. I did have some good mentors there, I must say. There were a lot of people who were very willing to share their knowledge. So that's what my manager at the time said. Call this person, this person, this person. They'll tell you everything. And every time you need help, just call them. They'll give you pointers, gives you some advice. So I found that people were very helpful in that company with sharing their knowledge and guidance. And one of my best teachers was actually one of my site supervisors, who was Mohawk, by the way. And he taught me a lot about how things should be managed on site, about halfway through my tenure at Alamac. And we really helped each other work really well as a team. Taught me a lot about teamwork, actually, as well, and how we each had essentially each other's backs when times got tough. And we did have a couple of tough projects where, we were small as an entity, and GCs would definitely try to take advantage of that. And that was a great mentor as well. When I went over to Canadian Standards Association, it was completely different project environment, which was kind of weird for me because I was hired because of my project background and because I knew about elevators at that point after 7 years. But it was all about managing people more than anything else, and managing paper and managing politics. So it was a completely different environment. All of that contributed to, of course, widening. It's not about just managing schedule, cost, and so on. It's about understanding the environment that you're working in as well. And so everything's a learning opportunity. So Yeah, accidental project manager. You just figure it out. Some of it is in my psyche. I'm an organized person. I've managed projects since I was a kid. I would manage surprise birthday parties. I once had a surprise birthday party at our summer camp. 200 people knew about this birthday party, except for the 2 people who were the victims.
All because of your
I don't know how it happened.
project
No, I wouldn't
management
say it's me
capabilities.
only. I had a good team. We did it as a team. I understood teamwork, and we did it as a team. We got this idea in our heads. We had visitors from Europe, and we'd never see them again, basically. So we wanted to have a big surprise part, and it was one of their birthday, I think. So we wanted a surprise birthday goodbye party for them the day before they were leaving. The whole camp knew about it except them. So, I mean, and we had everything so super organized, tickety-boo, everything was done, everything was on time. So that's my first real project, I think. I was 14, something like that. So, yeah.
It's interesting. Obviously, we haven't even touched on project management yet, but you just, from my first interaction with you to coming all the way out here on the train to meet me at my place to do this, and just your dedication to give back to the industry and the pro bono work that you do and the amount of activity that you post on LinkedIn, you're all over the place. And it seems like it's your passion. It's your calling.
It is.
And I feel that it's rare to find that. I know a lot of people listening, including myself. And I think it's just kind of a general consensus these days that a lot of people are searching for that.
Mm.
And they're constantly trying to stumble upon that passion or find that passion. But I guess sometimes it's just in you from day one. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that passion was underlying. You didn't really understand or realize it was project management until you tried enough things to figure out that that's exactly what it was.
Yes, and it can be a painful journey if you don't have a mentor. You said about mentors, and I should say I did have, I still do have a friend of the family, Mr. Petrenko, who has always been there coaching me and encouraging me. So that helps. Although he doesn't, I'm not sure that he knows what I do or how I do it, but it's just that sort of, that soft, he's a little bit outside of your sphere. So nowadays, it's so interesting to me now because the world has changed and there's an acknowledgement that young people need to be mentored. There wasn't that acknowledgement when I graduated. That if you want your businesses to continue and you want another generation to take over, that you look for those people in your company that are willing to carry the torch, that are interested in carrying the torch, and you encourage that flame. And I think that's a really positive change that's happened in engineering as a whole, because I really didn't feel it was like that when I graduated. So yeah, find good mentors, find what you like. Even with projects, there's such a variety of projects out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not enjoying it, maybe you're in the wrong company. Maybe you're in the wrong type of projects. Maybe you should go to a different kind of project, different environment to do projects. But find your passion in general. A lot of your speakers on these podcasts have said, find your passion. And life is short. And I can't believe that I'm over 50 now. I mean, it just boggles my mind because to me, I still feel like I'm 30 and how can this be? Like it just went by like that. So life is too short. And, but at the same time, you got to give things a good, honest try and learn from every experience that one has, good and bad,
Right.
And use that to build up your career. What direction do you want to go in? Try different things. I had a lot of failures before I found this. I thought I'd do quality management, become a quality management auditor. That was another possibility for part-time work. But I took a couple of quality management courses and I went, ooh, this is rather tedious. I'm not sure I like this.
Yeah.
It's way too close to checking specs and drawings. So it wasn't my cup of tea either, although I appreciate quality managers. And I was quality manager for Procept for a while as well. But I preferred to be for a company as opposed to being an auditor. I started scrutinizing quality management. But I don't mind being an auditor for projects. That was a completely different ballgame. So you got to find what you like and what you're interested in, and what you're willing to dig at and keep peeling away until you've got to the nub of it, which I'm still not there, and figure out that, yeah, this is what I want to build on. This is what I keep building on.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that you do have to give it an honest try because most of the time it takes, in project management and in a lot of industries, it takes a bit of time for the people that you work with to understand your capabilities, to give you enough responsibility for you to experience it on your own. And if you don't have that and you feel like you're being micromanaged, it may be because somebody hasn't quite developed a level of trust for you and you're not getting the full experience of the job. But just quickly, for a second here, back to mentors, one of the things that I love to ask people is how they have found their mentors or how they can go about latching on to somebody or asking questions. Because I feel as though people are a little bit too scared or reserved or shy or whatever it is to go and approach those people. And I think that also the person that, and I talk about this all the time, so sorry for repeating myself, but the people that have the knowledge, such as yourself and such as some of the people I've interviewed, they realize too late in their career that, I'm retiring in 5 years and I haven't passed anything on. And they say it's like burning a library when somebody leaves a company.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you recommend that those two parties meet together? Because obviously the company can try and provide a continuity program or a coaching program. But if it's just somebody that feels maybe a bit stranded and wants some direction, where do you think they can go for that?
Well, you just got to keep asking questions. Some of the societies out there, professional organizations, have mentoring programs. So signing up for something like that. But then you got to click with that person as well. That's one of the reasons I'm active. I get these spurts and starts on LinkedIn. I'll go 6 months without saying anything, and all of a sudden I'll have like every week something new. But it's one of the reasons I do the LinkedIn. I'm hoping to, pass on certain things to whoever needs it. I don't know about formal mentoring relationships. I thought about that, but you really have to know the person and look forward to talking with them and chatting with them and having the glass of wine or whatever. And that's hard to do if you don't establish a relationship outside of just work.
That's right.
Right. So sometimes it happens just in passing. You get some really good friends and then you start bouncing ideas off of them. And with Alimac, it was, my manager, Ian, who said, call this person in Sweden and keep using them. But it was only mentoring about projects. It wasn't mentoring on a personal level, right?
Right.
So, maybe that has to be separate. I don't know. As you say, it's one thing in the company, but it's another thing when you start looking outside of your sphere. I actually went to the PEO at one point because I was really floundering, Professional Engineers Ontario, and they had an HR person there. And I had a consulting session with him because I was floundering in my career, wondering, what do I do next? Where do I go? And he gave me some really good, I was expecting for him to give me career advice, like this is how you write your resume and this is where you need to apply. It wasn't like that at all. It was much more introspective and it was this kind of conversation about what are your passions and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's good to have a family friend that you can, talk to and just encourage you to try this and try that. It's like finding a date, I think. You just have to take the knowledge and the coaching wherever you can find it and keep asking. Don't leave yourself open. I think I just had a mentoring session this week and I don't know if it was like that, but it seemed like it because a young lady approached me at a conference and we just started chatting and she started asking me all this stuff about where she goes next. And very bright light, way smarter than me. Master's of MBA with an engineer and all this engineering degree and so on. And I realized afterwards, we spent all evening talking about where, some things in engineering, but also some things about what she can do next. And I realized it was kind of like a mentoring session. And I was giving her, I have nothing to gain from the discussion. I just view her as somebody who could really do some amazing stuff. So find somebody who believes in you as opposed to somebody who talks down to you.
Yeah.
I think that's really key.
For sure.
And who pushes from the bottom as opposed to, you should be doing this sort of thing. And just keep asking questions till you find the right person, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think one of the other things you mentioned there is trying to meet with people in the informal environment, like having a beer after work or going for dinner or grabbing lunch and, getting to know them on a little bit more of a personal level to add that extra layer of connection will help strengthen that bond. But the next area I wanted to jump into, and it's actually funny that you said you're an accidental project manager, because one of the next things I wanted to ask you was a lot of companies seem to employ project managers under the trial by fire.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, hey, you seem like you have a good head on your shoulders. Here's a job. Or, go be a project manager under a director at a job that you've never done before. And obviously that's putting the company at risk. And it's also, I don't know if it's unfair, but it's almost abdication. It's putting somebody in a position that they feel they should have the answers to that they don't. And I'm curious what you think about that and maybe what you think can be done to improve that process.
I think it's changing, and that's good. The bigger companies are starting to recognize that project management is a competency. It's a core competency, and they have to develop those project managers. And if they haven't had formal training, which there isn't much in the schools out there, and what is delivered is somewhat spotty, that they have to develop them in-house. You are absolutely right. You are charging people with sometimes very small amount of work experience with sometimes millions of dollars. And it's a sink or swim kind of attitude. Oh, well, and that attitude was quite prevalent, I would say, before the year 2000. And I'm just arbitrarily choosing that as a year because primarily that's when the PMP got really popular. It was around about late 1990s and early 2000s. It just, exploded and everybody started getting their credentials. But, because of that, companies are starting to realize, hey, I need to find somebody who actually at least knows the language, at least to know a little bit about process and some of the tools and techniques. So it is changing. A lot of the bigger companies in Canada have a career path for this. For smaller companies, I say, don't skimp on it. You're entrusting your people with sometimes millions of dollars, a business unit. And if something goes south, you can fire them, whatever, but you're still left with it. And your company's reputation is left with it.
That's right.
So think about how you want to develop these people. Not only that, but they're more likely to stick around if you do that. You put all this effort into developing them, training them. You want them to actually, even if you don't send them to courses, if you develop them in-house, you want them to stick around. If you don't take any time with them, developing them as a person and as a project manager, and that does mean sending them to courses, or bringing courses in-house, or having in-house coaches, whatever it takes, whatever that looks like for you, they're going to feel like, okay, where's the better offer? That's fine. I saved your project and I managed to get out of this one unscathed. Where can I go next? Sort of thing. You're not really making any investment, making me a better project manager. So I think that has to fade. It has to fade. And the common refrain I'm hearing from contractors as well, the schools should do this. Schools should do this. Well, I agree. The schools should do some of this. Absolutely. And the schools, universities and colleges, I think they could do better in this arena. I really, really do. Some of them do. Of course, the ones that I'm in are great.
Of course.
I'm not going to insult those. But I think it should be a little bit more thorough all across, especially in the engineering schools, in the technology, engineering technological programs, technology programs at the colleges. This is a core competency now. And choose instructors and professors who actually have had some field experience, who can talk about real life, and then also teach the theory, and don't view project management as just a sideline. Developing countries take this stuff very, very seriously. And if we're not watching it, these developing economies in Africa and South America, if it wasn't for their terrible political environments, they'd overtake us economically, because they do take this stuff seriously.
Interesting. And I guess that when you have in-house training, it also creates a standard and conformity, because one of the things, or one of the lines that you hear most often, at least in my experience, is, this is the way I do it.
Yes.
Not the way we do it as a company. It's always, this is the way I've always done it, or this is the way that I've learned to do it. And then you'll hop over to another job and you're working with somebody else. No, this is the way I do it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're working with the same client potentially in the future, and that person's getting a different spin on the same sort of management. And it kind of looks as though your company may not have a back end to speak about these things.
Yeah. And worst of all, bad habits perpetuate themselves. So you may learn some bad habits along the way as well. Just because you do it that way doesn't mean it's the right way. So yeah, I do believe that it should be, especially as you grow as an organization, you should think about how you want to manage this area, especially project-oriented companies who do nothing but projects. The world is moving way too fast for you to try and figure it out while you're actually putting it together. I mean, that was also, we had the time. maybe even 30, 40 years ago, projects were not at the breakneck speed we're in today.
Especially with technology.
Especially with technology. And technology is going to, I think the next 10 years in construction is going to be very interesting. I think technology is finally going to start having a huge impact on how we perform projects.
What's your forecast? What do you think's coming technology-wise, or what are you looking most forward to?
Well, I'm looking most forward to having better software tools and hardware, actually, because I don't think the tools that we have today are good enough for a construction site. They break. I've gone through 2 computers in the last 2 years. One of them barely lasted me a year. I won't mention the names, but they were brand name computers. They weren't no name, right? Because we do drop computers. We drop tablets. We drop laptops. That's what happens they're covered with dust. Even when we're so careful with these things, and I try so hard to be careful, you can't help it. And there are cases for them and so on and so forth. But then the insides malfunction. So you just spent $3,500 on a tool for your employee, and it's lasted barely 3 years.
Yeah.
Because the insides have melted down.
Yeah.
Because we can't wait for one program to load while the other one's closing. We don't always shut down the computer thoroughly before we put it away.
Or
and
shut it down at
stuff it in
all.
our bag. Yeah, exactly. So all that kind of stuff is happening. So we need better hardware that withstands that kind of abuse, that isn't so sensitive. And we need better software that we can use just like a notebook. It's getting there. I'm switching slowly. I got a little really good tablet. I won't mention the company because it gives them a plug. But I got sort of a pseudo computer tablet sort of thing, and I'm slowly switching over my manuals to using, and so I don't carry around paper. And it's almost like when you keep a daily log, you can almost keep a daily log on it. Almost. It still has a few things that's not quite reading.
Yeah.
Why isn't that pen writing? It should be writing. How come it's glitching out on me? Where's my next page? Anyway, so I'm still finding a few things that could be improved, but overall, I can see it coming, and I think that's going to have a huge transformation. There's all these apps. One of your interviewees said that, I think that's fantastic. I think it's probably one of the most useful apps is being able to take a picture, mark it up on site right there, right in front of, and then send it into the cloud and into your office right away so they can do what they need to do with it and take measurements and everything with the app. I mean, I think that's brilliant. There's got to be a digital transformation in our industry now as well, but cautiously. I think the biggest danger for us is to jump on the digital transformation bandwagon, start implementing a whole pile of different tools that may not give us the benefits. So I have to be really clear what exactly we're trying to improve and, what are the tools out there and do it in a very sort of focused, measured manner so we don't end up with Phoenix, huge investments in stuff that actually didn't bring us any cost efficiencies or labor efficiencies and just made everybody's life a lot more difficult. So it has to be the right tools. And I think that we have to work with the IT industry to actually develop that. I don't think they're out there yet.
Yeah, and shout out to the IT industry. Like, we need IT professionals in construction just as much as any other organization does, any other type of industry, and it's important. And like you mentioned too, and I've seen this happen so many times, is a lack of, I guess it would be a lack of knowing why you need the software in the first place. And next thing you know, 6 months into it, you've implemented it and it just doesn't work the way you wanted it to because you didn't spend enough upfront time. So you're putting people through that process 3, 4, 5 times. Oh, we're on our 5th CRM program. We're on our 5th this or that. And everybody's just wondering, okay, are we using this one or that one? We used to use this. I'm going back to Excel.
Yeah.
And that it happens so often.
Excel, never go away, please. We love our Excel.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's still the core. There's nothing wrong with Excel. But I think, and I'm telling IT professionals who are looking for a change of pace or a new job, start looking at the construction industry. We need help.
Yeah.
We really need help, whether it's working for a contractor and getting their digital systems sort of aligned and sort of easier to use, or whether helping that contractor choose the right software or the right hardware, or whether it's actually developing and coding and programming apps for us. I think there's a ton of opportunities, and I think that it's high time that we move in that direction. Drones too, they're still not there yet. Again, it's a finicky piece of equipment. You need all this, but there is huge potential there, especially for work that's inherently excruciatingly unsafe.
Yes.
Like working with nuclear reactors, for example, and so on. So there's a lot of potential there to learn how to use drones, how to integrate that with our industry as well.
Yeah, the opportunities are vast right now.
Mm-hmm.
And just reeling it back to project management itself. Obviously, you're a trainer and you've seen everything from very experienced professionals that have maybe even taught you one or two things to people that kind of come in off the street, like we mentioned, trial by fire. What do you think the common denominator is in terms of key skills that project manager lacks?
Yeah, I thought about this one. I don't know if there's a common thread. I'm going to focus on our industry because other industries are completely different.
Our industry being construction?
Construction
Okay.
and engineering in particular. If you're new, if you're an engineer that's off the street, sort of new, or a supervisor moving into that arena, I think sometimes we don't give enough credence to the people management side of things. It doesn't come naturally necessarily to a lot of us. It's not what we went to school for. Something that we can get good. An easy one, by the way, is paperwork and administration. We all hate it. Again, not something we went to school for, but it's something that's absolutely necessary. And keeping data is absolutely and invaluable to keep data of actual performance compared to what we had originally planned. It will give you so much information for the future and make you look really smart. And it's an easy one. We don't tend to put enough attention to that, and just learning to use words in writing skills and so on. But to actually make projects more efficient, more effective, to understand how to manage people. It's not just about cost and schedule. It's about your team. It's about working with your site supervisor, working with your general foreman, working with your foreman, working with your trades, getting them to believe in your project, communicating that grand objective, the vision of what you're doing. Don't be afraid to transfer your desire for a successful result to your team, right? And working on motivating them so that they are as bought into that as you are. That's tough. It's really, really hard. And you might not have the right people. So, understanding who's got strengths, who's got weaknesses, so the people side of things, I think, is very tough for us. And in our industry, other industries in project management is completely different. And it's something that we have to continually work on. We don't, especially if we're new to the industry, we don't give that enough thought.
Mm-hmm. The soft
skills, the soft skills, how to manage people.
Yeah, it's very important. I think that is most industries, though. The soft skills are important, and we touched on it earlier. And even with a mentor, you've got to break those barriers down. It can't be just about work 24/7, 365 emails, and then you lose the personal touch.
Get this done. What do you mean we don't have it done? What's wrong with you? You're not going to get things done that way.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get buy-in to getting things. I mean, every once in a while, I'm not a roses and flower person by any stretch of the imagination. But learning how to communicate that something needs to get done, I think it's the hardest thing in the world, to communicate to somebody that something needs to get done, and it needs to get done now in an efficient and focused manner, and it's urgent, and not stress out about it, and not sort of come top down on somebody, because that's when you start losing them. Especially if you do it over and over and over again. You start losing them. And I think that's the toughest thing in the world to do. Some people do it so brilliantly. I admire them. But it's the toughest thing to do, is to communicate to somebody your need and get them to buy into that need and actually do it for you.
Makes sense. Now, besides the soft skills aspect, what do you think some of the more technical skills are that, I know that there's, if we talk PMP or PMBOK, there's the knowledge areas, and we've got all of these different core competencies that are within project management that are required to come together harmoniously to have a successful project. But what would you say are the most important ones? Because we're not obviously going to hit all of them in projects. And if we talk construction here, what do you think some of the harder ones to hit are that people are maybe missing out on or should focus more time on, that seem to have a larger upside than the others?
I think learning to write. Another skill that we tend to neglect in our arena, but learning to write, learning to use words properly. again, if we're contractors, we have to know our contract. We have to know how to read that contract. We have to know how to use that contract to our advantage. We're not lawyers. We're never going to be lawyers. But be able to communicate through the contract, learning to write. Otherwise, I see project managers, it's really interesting because I see project managers from all walks of life in construction, and everybody has a strength and a weakness. And it does depend very much on the type of project you're working on as to what are the key skills. By the way, that's a key skill. So we've got this Home Depot of tools that we can use in project management. So a key skill is to know which one to use and when, and what will give us a benefit and what won't. It's not one size fits all. It's not one methodology that fits every single project. And it doesn't depend, and that's what we're struggling with, is trying to figure that out actually. It doesn't depend on dollar value. It does depend on those things, but not always on dollar value, not always on schedule, not always on how many stakeholders you have involved. It's a mix of all of those. So as a project manager, to be able to choose just the right tools and not just simply repeat what you did last time, because if you do just wash, load, and repeat, or load, wash, and repeat, it doesn't necessarily work, right? So being able to do that and not just fall back to what I did last time. You asked about the one tool that we should use that will be the project manager's best friend. I do this in my classes. I always start off from that point of view. But being very clear as to what's important for you as the contractor in terms of the balance of constraints. We talk about time, cost, scope, schedule, quality, et cetera, but also being very clear as to what the client wants. And if you can align those two, that will be probably the most useful tool you can use all the way through the process. Because if you understand what your client wants out of the project, you can negotiate. You know how to negotiate. And especially if you know what your company wants too. And if you can empathize and learn that aspect of it, and then learn how to sell different things when you run into trouble or whatever. So that balance of constraints is the one tool that I would say, that will stand a project manager good stead. Schedules, all that other good stuff, yes, but the balance of constraints. So that means looking at a project from a higher level, not
That's
just
right.
being an executioner. We're often hired to be executioner. You said that trial by fire. Essentially, what's happening there is the project manager is being brought in as the executioner. And I use that term on purpose because you might be executing yourself as well in the process. And it's not fair. You're absolutely right. It's not fair. A lot of the decisions have already been made. You have actually very little influence on turning a project around to a positive if there have been major faults made in the planning portion or in the selling of the contract to the client or whatever. You have very little opportunity to fix it from this point forward if all you're done is brought in from the execution point. Back to Alamac, my manager was a smart guy, and he was the sales manager, so it's his job to negotiate the sale. But he would always involve me in the process, and I was often part of that process of writing the specification, putting together the bid, and therefore I was also accountable for it, right? So we ended up doing a decent job, I think, of creating realistic bids because we worked together, as opposed to he created it and then brought me in once the contract was signed.
Right. So when you're on a project, and we've got all sorts of projects these days, we have P3s, we have design build, we have bid spec. And sure, when we go into a project, we're looking at the project documents and we're making assumptions as to what that client is actually looking for in terms of quality, in terms of all sorts of things, especially when it's a design build. Do you have any recommendations on how to read through that or how to deal with the client themselves to really understand meetings, questions?
And that's why I say words are so important, because you can't ask the same question over and over again, but you can ask it in different words and take a lot of notes, right? So that you can kind of say, oh, well, sorry, if I'm reading you correctly, this is what you said in the last meeting. Is that still true? Or are you looking at this whole project a little bit differently now, right? And, if you ask questions in different words, then you can slowly fish. Sometimes clients themselves don't know. Sometimes they're the executioners.
Yeah, that's right.
Selected from their company. Hey, you're it. Manage the contractor for us, right? So that's really tough because they've got higher powers to answer to. And whether or not they have the leadership skills to negotiate that sometimes political environment, especially P3s and so on, is another story, right? But keep asking the questions to kind of fish that out of the client as much as you can. And when they change their mind halfway through the project, they always do, you literally can say things like, okay, am I getting confused here because you told me a month ago that, this was really important to you, but I'm hearing that now this is more important. So I just want to be clear. Is it this or is it this? Because you understand if it's this now, I have to switch all of this around and focus on this. Not a problem. I just want to be clear. Right?
Get it in writing too.
And get it in writing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm taking notes, right? Well, exactly. And the best thing to do when that kind of conversation is pull out your note from the last time and say, like, have I got this wrong or what? Doesn't always work. I've been in a situation with one client, government, who shall remain nameless. Go figure. But they absolutely refuse to take responsibility for changing their minds. Over and over and over and over again. Absolutely refuse to take responsibility. And what can you do? At a certain point, you go, well, I'm just doing the best I can. I hope I get out of here unscathed.
Exactly.
With my reputation intact. Because at a certain point, you can't. If you can't manage to get past that wall with the client, what are you going to do?
That's it.
That's it. You just, okay, I've done everything I can. Now, if you have somebody, I always say to project managers, that's when you go to your sponsor and say, I'm not getting anywhere. Is there anything you can do? But you may both run into a brick wall. And what are you going to do? You're not going to have success 100% of the time. It's always a learning opportunity.
Yeah, it's a fallacy to think it's going to go perfect every single time.
It's not. No. It's not. And you'll always have your pain points. And the only thing you can do is say to yourself, okay, at a certain point, I'm going to do what I agree is right, what my team agrees is right, what my boss agrees is right. And if it doesn't work out, at least we've done everything in our power, within our swimming pool, we could do. And we can honestly say to ourselves after this is all over that we've done everything we could.
Something that I've been struggling with recently is designations. So we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to know your opinion on, I want to know the difference and your opinion on, let's say, going to university and taking a project management course, going through and getting a PMP, which is a process that I'm currently going through right now. And I have my thoughts about it. I'll reserve those thoughts for later if we get there. And then we've got the gold seal. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if there's anything else. So I'd like you to kind of deconstruct that aspect of project management for me, because, there's two sides. The first part of my brain said, if you get in with a good company and you have a successful track record and resume of on time, under budget, or happy client or whatever, that carries itself quite far in the industry. And then you've got these other layers of designations to add on top. And the adage you hear all the time is, those three letters on the end of your name are an extra, whatever, $20,000 or $15,000, or people are looking for that. So deconstruct that for me. And I want your opinion on that aspect of project management.
Yeah, there are a lot of designations and it is worthwhile to do. I actually found the PMP exam a very invigorating experience, funnily enough. I walked out of that feeling really good, not just because of my mark, but because I was learning things. And I was even learning things as I was writing the exam. So it felt good. When I passed, because I honestly didn't know when I was writing it whether I was going to pass or not. It's that kind of exam that really tests your confidence.
How long did you prep for it?
3 months.
3 months, okay.
3 months.
3 months every day? Like, what was your schedule like?
No. I had 2 kids around the age of 10 at the time, and I was working full time, so it was like snatches of time.
Okay.
And that's why it took 3 months, because some people can get ready in a week, right, or 2 weeks or whatever, right? They take a course, and I've been teaching it for 5 years. Well, very light, small courses at college, so it wasn't quite an in-depth course, but the surface of it. So I was familiar with some of the things that were, talked about in the PMBOK, but I spent 3 months reading the PMBOK thoroughly and reading another book and matching it and all this kind of stuff. And I was working for Procept, so I got to attend their courses, and that helped and so on. The language.
The language is crazy.
The language. I call it PMBOKese. You gotta learn your PMBOKese. And once you learn your PMBOKese, then that's already half the battle. Right? But it is true. And the reason why the language is important is we are doing projects with lots of different stakeholders. It's no longer a black box. Before 2000, a company would hire a project management company and say, here you go, we want this built. Here's your black box. Go away, do it. Call us when it's done. Right? Here's your money, whatever, right? Or your budget. Well, that's no longer true. Now clients, because things have gotten more complicated, because things are changing so fast. Your requirements might change during the project. We want contractors to be agile and flexible and incorporate new scope and new requirements as we go along, as we think of them. New technology. Oh, wow, we want new machines in the hospital, whatever. So we want to be able to do these things. Since we're working with this group, we have to have a common language. We can no longer have our own little company over here with our own little methodology, with our own language around that methodology. We have to be able to translate that methodology with the client's methodology. And now the client has project managers with designations as well. So the language is important. So we're all talking about the same thing. Do we all have the same understanding of what a baseline is? Right? As a very basic. I'm still hearing horror stories of people saying, oh yeah, the baseline changes every day. What? Right? You don't change a baseline unless you have a scope change, right?
That's
or
right, yeah.
some other reason. But anyways, it's a formal agreement anyways. It can't be just, oh well, every day it's going to change. No, that's not the way it works. So that's why the language is important. And PMBOK did that for us to some extent. ISO standards are doing it now. We're trying to globally standardize in project management language. Oh my gosh, it's tough.
Now, can you just quickly explain what ISO standards are so anybody that's listening that doesn't understand knows what it is?
Okay, so 2 questions, and I'm rambling and I should stop. Okay, so first of all, get back to the certifications. Remind me about the ISO question in a minute. Okay, so certification. So we talk about PMP. PMP is kind of, very well accepted in North America. It's kind of what a lot of clients ask for. Gold Seal they should be on the same level as PMP. Certainly the level of knowledge required for Gold Seal is the same as you need for your PMP. I was on the Gold Seal committee years ago. That was the one thing that I pushed for, was that those two, the language, the basic knowledge, the processes, and so on, should align with the PMBOK. What's the main difference? I tell people who ask me is, if you're going to stay in the contractor's world and you want to work as a contractor for your entire life, go for the Gold Seal. It's our Canadian designation. It's very well respected in the industry. All contractors recognize it. On top of everything else, very focused on our industry, on our construction industry. If you want to eventually see yourself working for somebody like a hospital or the government or OPG, you want to settle down and have a sort of a normal life, because our world is not necessarily normal, then do get your PMP, because that's generally something that organizations like that understand. They're both, as I mentioned, the knowledge required for both is pretty similar. The problem is, and I hate to say this, sorry, Gold Seal Committee, but I have an issue. They make it difficult to get. In what regard? Because 100 points. Okay, so only so much from work, only so much from education, the rest from courses. And the biggest issue I have with Gold Seal is they're very skimpy about giving out credits for courses. We've got that 10-day mechanical contractors project management course at Waterloo. 10 days studying nothing but project and project management. They give 10 points for that, 1 point per day. You've got to get 100 points. So it's a tough go. Mm-hmm. Whereas PMP, heck, you need 3 to 5 years experience, depending if you've got college or university. You need somebody to sign off on the projects that you've done. You need to learn that PMBOK backwards, forwards, and upside down. Then you're off to the races.
You think that's a detriment to it, though? It's the fact that it is like, and not that anybody should do this, but it seems as though you could just take a 5-day course and all of a sudden you're deemed
There
PMP.
Are people who are very good at writing exams, multiple choice exams.
So maybe there needs to be more of a balance. And I think also, just personally speaking, in regards to the Gold Seal, they seem to not have as good a marketing team behind them.
No,
because you don't hear about it as much.
You don't hear about it. PMI has people in Ottawa lobbying for the PMI and for the PMP, right? So that's why I plug the Gold Seal wherever I can, because it's our Canadian designation for the construction industry. I know that clients out there, especially government clients, are saying for big projects, we want to see a project manager on your team that has their designation. And some of them specifically say PMP in their RFP.
I've seen that.
Right?
Yeah.
And I keep saying you should say PMP or equivalent, because Gold Seal is equivalent. And on top of everything else, Gold Seal is specifically for construction. So now you're getting somebody who not only understands their way around project management, but they also understand how it's applied in the construction industry. Whereas PMBOK doesn't do that. In fact, PMBOK is leaning more and more towards the IT industry. They're going to go through a huge sea change over the next couple of years. July 1st, there's going to be a new exam. They do understand the weakness. PMI is very good at introspection and understanding what it does well and what it doesn't do well. They know they've had a problem with, some people are very good at writing exams, and then they run around saying, oh, look, I scored this on the exam. They don't give out scores anymore. That's one reason they don't give out scores. And then companies complain, look, I hired this guy with a PMP, and they don't know their front end from their back end about how to manage a project. So there has been that complaint back and forth to PMI. So PMI is trying, with every iteration of the PMBOK, with every iteration of the exam, they're trying to really increase the level of knowledge required to write the PMP. And July 1st is going to be a sea change for that. It's going to be very much, before it was all about process, now they're changing to people, business, and process. So they're going to give equal credence to the other two aspects of being a project manager, namely understanding how a project fits into the business and understanding how to lead and manage people as well, as opposed to just process.
Right.
So that's one. But I got to say also that there are other credentials. IPMA, International Project Management Association. There is a Canadian branch, Project Management Association of Canada. So that's an international designation. They are quite thorough in vetting project managers, level A, B, C, and D. As we start bringing international folks in to lead projects, we've got to recognize some of them may have those designations. IPMA argues, but I think a level C is equivalent to a PMP. Level A is quite high. It's director of projects sort of thing. So if you go internationally, that designation is looked on with great favor. Don't know enough about it, to tell you the truth. I've never sat for the exam. I'm always thinking I should, just no time. Prince 2 out of England is very specific methodology, not construction oriented, just generally more or less government oriented, although they'll argue with me that it's applicable everywhere. There's Australian designations, there are international designations on project management from other countries as well. And I would say that if you hire somebody with any of those designations, I hate to say this to PMI, you're on the same level, right? So all of them are good. It just depends on your background and what you want and what's easier to achieve.
Do PMI PDUs directly, did they fit into the Gold Seal at all? If you were to take a PMI course or something related to PMI, would it work as a Gold Seal credit? Do you know?
I would think so, because Gold Seal says that any industry-related course qualifies for credits. And they've actually boiled it down now to a formula. They used to I never knew how they awarded Gold Seal points for anything. It seemed to be somewhat random. But now they boiled it down to a formula. And as long as it's related to project management, if you're going for the project management designation, they have the other designations as well. They've now got a new team in charge. So they're trying really hard to change the way that they market that program and the way they make it available to people. So I'm looking forward to good things with Gold Seal. They'll never achieve the stature of PMI, but PMI is leaning more and more towards IT. So in the construction engineering industry, maybe we might start looking at that designation and saying, well,
Or get your employer to pay for both and get both.
I don't think I'd ever do that.
No?
No. And I looked at it myself. I thought maybe I'd like to do Gold Seal just to be, I think it's an awful lot of work for very little benefit, honestly. They're both good designations. You decide what your path forward is going to be. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And go for the one that you think is most relevant to your career path. And where do you want to be most active, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. No, that's great information. It really helps me understand what I'm doing a little bit more. And I guess I didn't understand that about Gold Seal as much, that it is on par with PMI. And I think clearly from the optics standpoint, the way they market themselves, but it's good to know that at least if you have your PMP, that you can decide to maybe switch out of industry in the future, and it applies broadly across North America, we could say.
By the way, even Gold Seal is very well recognized south of the border too.
Okay.
The construction associations in the States, I've been told, admire our Gold Seal program and wish they had a similar thing. But our advantage is that we have this, we like this idea of having a federal, whereas in the States, each state likes to do their own thing. So they have 52 states to argue with, right?
That's
52,
right, yeah.
50 states. Well, terrible, sorry, tired, end of day. 50 states which argue with, so that, it becomes a little more difficult to manage. But I really think the Gold Seal program is really, really good. But because of their marketing, because of the way they're skimpy about awarding points to educational programs, and because that makes it hard to achieve, PMI has done a wise thing, incidentally. PMI has a junior designation, CAPM, as well as the PMP. And Gold Seal is going in that direction as well, I forget what the language they use, but you could be working towards your Gold Seal, designated as a junior person, working towards your Gold Seal, and then work towards your Gold Seal. So I can assure, see, the difference is here, if somebody was asking me, an employer was asking me, I've got 2 candidates, one person has their construction Gold Seal project management designation, and one person has their PMP, who should I hire? I would say probably to a contractor, go for the person with the Gold Seal. Because
Interesting. Okay.
that PM designation shows that not only do they know about project management, but they also know how it's applied in construction. Whereas the PMP is very generic. They'll know language. I mean, without looking at anything else. It could be the PMP person has had tons of experience and all this other stuff. So you have to look at their project.
But just credential to credential.
Credential to credential.
Okay.
And, I've got no stake in saying that. I'm not stroking anybody's back by doing this. I don't have any stocks in Gold Seal, and I don't have any stocks in PMI.
And I didn't pay you to say it. This is honest. This is the honest truth.
This is my honest truth point of view, yes.
That's great. So one of the last things I wanted to ask you before we get into a little wrap up and a little more personal questions, just to kind of round out the conversation here, is what are the challenges that we're facing in the construction industry right now from your perspective? And I know it's vast and we could talk for hours about it, but I know that you're very passionate and you do a lot to help improve the industry. Where do you think we could do better right now?
Well, we all know that we're going to face a huge labor shortage in skilled trades and in construction management personnel, project personnel. There was a great panel discussion on TVO a couple of weeks ago. I posted it on my LinkedIn with Steve Paikin about the challenges the construction industry is facing. I think it's worthwhile watching for anybody in this industry. So I think that's going to be our biggest challenge, is the huge turnover that's happening, particularly in the GTA. And why is it particularly in the GTA? Because in other parts of Ontario, you could get a person who's nearing retirement. We're aging out is what's happening.
That's right. Yep.
A person who's nearing retirement, 50, 65, well, 65 is the new 45 as far as I'm concerned. And they could very well say, yeah, no problem, I'm retiring and I'd like to spend 2 months of the year in Florida, but that's going to be December, January. So the rest of the year, yeah, sure, I can come in and manage a project for you. No problem. I can, help out here and there. It's extra money in addition to my retirement fund. Hey, that's great, right? But in the GTA, I'm sitting on a house that's worth over $1 million that I bought 20 years ago for less than 100 or 150 or 200,000. It'd be stupid not to sell it. So I think in the GTA in particular, in the Big Six around here, we're going to be facing a completely different challenge of folks not only aging out, but not wanting to work part-time for our previous employer.
You're not the first person to say that to me. I had a conversation with a gentleman that hasn't gone live yet, and he is an electrical estimating teacher. And he was saying that it could be a similar thing on a contractual basis for estimators. As long as you can provide a secure internet connection and you can use the software, you can be bidding projects on the beach in Florida if you want.
Yeah, but that's different than being a project manager where you have to be on site.
That's right, absolutely.
Right? And it's different for the tradespeople, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to stick around. Why would I?
They wouldn't, yeah.
Why would I? Why would I agonize? Why would I give myself more gray hairs, right? When I'm sitting on a house that's worth,
Not to mention physically, at some point when you are physically on the tools in the trades,
your body
you can't continue.
Yeah.
You have to stop, otherwise it's going to be too late.
But we often ask these folks to be foremen and so on.
That's right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And like I said, great stuff, part-time. Sure, no problem. I can come in and when you have a job for me, I'll be your foreman. No problem. I can continue doing that. But in the GTA, you'd be sitting there going, do I really want to do that? Face commuting. And especially when I'm sitting on a house that's worth so much more than when I bought it 30, 40 years ago, right? So I think GTA in particular will be facing that challenge, probably Vancouver as well. I don't know about some of the other big centers in Canada. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we're going to face. Oh, you asked me a question about ISO and I never got back to it. Sorry, let's go back to that. 1 second.
Wow, you got a sharp mind. I
forgot.
Yeah,
no, I just remembered. We forgot about that. I was thinking about something else and I realized we forgot. So ISO, a lot of us know about it. It's not as the buzzword nowadays as much as it used to be in the late 90s, but International Organization for Standardization. We are working on standards on project management there. It's TC 258 on projects, programs, and portfolios. And It's kind of like quality management was probably in the 80s, where they were working on the standards, but it was hard to gain that traction. I hope at some point. So what we're hoping for is that these ISO standards would kind of be the umbrella. It's not the intention of ISO to ever have to be in charge of certification programs or anything like that. ISO's never done that. It's always been private companies in charge of certifications and so on. But to at least have a common framework for projects, common principles. We talked about a competency standard. That didn't work, didn't go anywhere yet. But things like governance, we have a governance standard, for example, that we published a couple of years ago, 2017.
Is it federally backed?
In Canada, no.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we get a small grant to go to the conferences.
But there's nobody in legislation that's saying we need these standards for these specific things, go and do this.
No, and I wish we did.
Okay.
And all of us project managers that are active in this and wish that this was in place don't have time to lobby for this. So I keep saying it's a retirement project for me that I'm going to push to get at least the governance standard. Maybe we don't need, I hate to say this, maybe we don't need another standard that talks about processes. Maybe we don't need another standard that talks about how projects should be managed. But we need a standard in Canada that says, look, for projects to be performed well, they need these particular elements. And why do I say the ISO standards have a lot of credits? They're not big documents. They're like, 20, 40 pages long. Some of them read like checklists. They're boring as heck. Like they're not inspiring reading. But if you read it, you go, of course, every project should have a business case. It doesn't have to be formal, doesn't have to be in writing, doesn't have to be in a particular format. But you should know why you're doing it, right? That's kind of makes sense, right?
For sure, yeah.
And everybody on your team should know why you're doing it. We should have performance reporting. We should have leadership that kind of knows about the project and is kind of involved in it, right? But when they're enshrined in a standard that has been developed by some, I view as some of the most influential project management minds that come together and put their own time and money. We pay for going to these conferences ourselves.
That's
Conference
right.
doesn't cost anything, which is good. But what it does is the travel. And there are some exotic places that we go to, like outside of Stockholm, Sweden. Sweden is ridiculously expensive to travel to. Probably the most expensive conference I ever attended. Canada is sort of interested. We've gotten a lot of support from Standards Council of Canada. They've given us a bit of money to travel to some of this. Not a whole lot, but they also have lots of things to juggle and try to parcel out some of this funding. But, so most of it is from our own pockets. But talk about being in a room for a week with some of the most, I should say, the most studious minds that study projects. You learn so much. And when they come out with an output, you understand that this output has been hashed over for about 3 years. Every word has been examined for relevance and benefit. Anything that the whole group didn't agree to was of benefit. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the majority of the group didn't agree to was relevant, is out. So it's basically when you've got this document, you're looking at it, if you aren't doing these things, you're not setting yourself up for success. You might get a project that meets its budget and schedule by the skin of your teeth,
Yeah.
and by the gray hairs of your team and the increased blood pressure. That's all. And you won't be able to repeat it. When you haven't got these things in place, you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain and agony in your project, a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted taxpayer dollars when you haven't got these things in place. And that's why I like governance, because governance talks to that very high level and says, look, at least start from here. At least start from here. Okay? And then you can start applying the tools, processes, and whatever else. But start with governance, and especially these mega projects, PPP, some of this stuff just makes the hair crawl. The money that's wasted on some of these things, it's taxpayer dollars. Where are they going? Right. But anyways, yeah. So that's what ISO does. If you want to get involved, you have to have a certain level of experience to get involved, a certain level of knowledge. Most of the work that we do during the year is rather tedious. It's arguing about words and politics, unfortunately, and so on. But going to the conference opens your mind to a whole different way of looking at projects. When we compare words, there are people who actually say case studies to prove whether something is good or not. So you learn an awful lot about how projects are run in the rest of the world.
Amazing. Well, before we jump into this next section, is there anything else you want to speak about in terms of construction, project management specific, anything at all that you want to leave behind there?
Gosh, I can't think of anything.
Okay, well, let's go for it.
Yeah.
The one thing I have to ask you, Darya, is I remember after class when I asked you to be on this podcast, I looked you up on LinkedIn and you have a cappuccino as your profile picture.
Yes, I do.
So what's up with the cappuccino?
My daughter took that picture. I don't like my picture. I don't
give me a
I'm
break.
not photogenic. So when I go on my LinkedIn site, the last thing I want to see is my face.
Okay, for anybody
So that's
listening
number
right
one.
now, go to toolspodcast.com. When this is live, obviously you will be listening to this, and go look at the mugshot that she sent me. You're a fierce woman. I loved that picture. I loved it. I saw it. I'm like, this lady means business. I'm excited to talk to her. You have the passion. It's a good picture. I think you're going to get a bunch of people messaging you now saying you need to change it because it's good. I like it.
I don't like my picture at all. I certainly don't want to see my face. In fact, when we have web conferences and so on, ISO is very much about web conference, all online. The last thing I want to see is myself.
So do you wear a mask? You turn your camera off?
I turn my camera off. Yeah, I turn my camera off. I go, seriously, guys, I'll come on and say hello. You all know what I look like. I turn it off. So I just don't like staring at myself. I really, really don't. But the cappuccino reminds me of a time we were in Paris and my daughter took that picture.
I was going to
so
say, it's got a little chocolate on the side.
I love, it's a cafe creme, but I love and good times. Yeah, that's why. So yeah, coffee is me. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a question I like to ask people. And I don't know if I've ever really explained why, but I remember the first time that I ever stepped foot on a job site, you're running for coffees. And then the first time I was ever on a large job site, everybody's hovering around the coffee pot. And, most industries, sure, most people drink coffee. But what's your favorite type of coffee in Toronto? Do you have a specific type?
No.
Or you just need whatever you can get?
Caffeine. Yeah. Intravenously, preferably. No, I'm just kidding. First thing in the morning. Yes, I need that caffeine first thing in the morning. I'm an absolute addict, but I don't drink a lot. Actually, I can't. I'm a little bit hyper. You may detect that. If I drink more than about 2 cups a day, then I can't sleep at night. So I have to stop around 4 or 5. I might have a second cup, whatever. But if you ask me what my favorite coffee is now, that's a different story. I love Hawaiian Kona. We went to Hawaii a few years ago. Oh my gosh. That is coffee, but it's expensive.
Have you found it locally here?
My husband has. I don't know whether he found it online. There supposedly is a coffee specialty shop out in the East End that sells all these bizarre coffees.
I know Costco was selling Kona coffee at one point in time, and Costco coffee is relatively good, some of them, but I haven't seen it in a while. So
yeah, you gotta be careful. It's not the Kona blend. I found out there's lots of fake Kona out there. I found
Interesting.
out. Yeah, people write about this stuff. But anyways,
always pulling the wool over your eyes.
I bought Kona actually in Hawaii, but it's expensive. It really is a treat, a Sunday morning treat. But I've discovered Peruvian coffee. I'm going to give a plug for Peru. I went to Peru for a conference. Mm-hmm. And everybody was, there was coffee and they were selling beans everywhere. So I thought, okay, my daughter loves coffee. She drinks profusely every day. And I said, I'm going to bring her a bag of beans for a gift. Oh, well, I might as well grab a bag for myself too, right? Oh my gosh. It is good coffee.
Yeah?
It is. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than Kona. So yeah, look up Peruvian coffee. If you can get Peruvian coffee, it's not quite as good as Kona, but it's comes pretty darn close.
I'm going to get you to try some Nicaraguan coffee next time we meet up. I got a friend of mine that I went to high school with that actually took over his father's farm. He bought a farm in Nicaragua, and he's just made it his journey to become a coffee importer. And now he's importing all across Canada, but he's down there and he is going into the backcountry with a Spanish translator, and he's finding the farmers that are literally growing the coffee beans that are winning the Golden Cup Awards, and he's starting to import it. So
good stuff.
So we'll swap some coffee one day. You're obviously very educated and you keep yourself abreast with the latest standards and changes within our industry. Do you read books or do you read articles and news more?
I read everything.
Yeah?
I love to read.
What's the most impactful thing that you've read or listened to in the last while?
Actually, I picked up a book called Contract Management for Project Management Professionals. I can't remember if it was Project Professionals or Project Management Professionals. But can't remember his name, but I'll send it to you if I after the podcast if you're interested.
Yeah, we'll post it online.
Because this fellow just wrote this book basically dumping all of his knowledge. And I found that extremely enlightening. in terms of contract management. But I mean, it's dry. If you're not into contract management, other people will not like it. But
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds
Yeah.
pretty dry.
it's well, you know, if you can pick it apart, because he's got his own little horror stories in there and his case studies, and this happened and that happened, and he's got, you know, a whole bunch of forms and templates and so on. So I kind of like that. But it's really a comprehensive book for contract management. I kind of like that for non-contract management people. Lately, I've gotten into a lot of books about First Nations issues and by First Nations authors. And I find them I mean, it's categorizing. I hate stereotyping and categorizing, but they've been very impactful. A lot of those books have been very impactful. Just understanding stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, and how poorly we actually do it today. With all due respect to the PMBOK talks about this as a knowledge area, but I'm finding that people say, well, I followed the process, so I must be good. And it's not covering it. So we're talking a lot about a whole bunch of things in the project management environment, namely stakeholder engagement. We're talking about sustainability. We're talking about benefits. And if we really want to know about how those things are managed, I think we have to listen to people who are survivors. And I look at our First Nations and their survivors. And there's a lot of deep, deep knowledge there. And if we want to understand anything about sustainability, benefits, and stakeholder engagement, learning a little bit about that history and where that point of view is coming from, that's really gotten my, not there yet. As you can see, I just picked up I've got a stack of books this big that I've got to go through. But it's really opened my eyes to and not just about the wrongs that were done in the last 200 years. I don't mean to trivialize them. They're huge. They're phenomenal. They're painful to read about. Fundamentally painful. You can't believe that people who built this country actually did some of these things. You're sitting there in shock through some of this stuff. But it gives you that deep sense of where the current generation is coming from. And it has incredible relevance to projects. I'm probably expressing myself terribly, but I can't think of any other way to say it.
Well,
but that's had a huge impact on how I think and how I feel.
I'll get you to share some of those titles with me, and we'll post them if anybody's
Yeah.
interested. One of the questions I know that you were looking forward to answering was, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh,
Go back
yes.
in time and have a conversation.
Yes. So those of you listening, Colin sends us a list of questions ahead of time to kind of think about and at least prepare some sort of response.
Yeah, it's to be intentional with your answers.
Yeah, so you don't ramble. But yeah, I would say, first of all, project management is a thing. It's a career path. You're good at it, go for it. So that's first and foremost, is I would tell my 18-year-old self to pursue that as a career, because nobody was saying that at the time. And I say to students now in the courses that I teach that, listen, open your mind that this could be a career path for you. But if it isn't, and you want to be a technical person, make that choice. Feel free to make that choice. But recognize that projects will touch you at some point. You'll be a part of a project, even as a techie person. So it's good to know the language, even if it doesn't inspire you and you don't like that soft skill stuff and the business management stuff. You should know about it because you'll be a part of it. Right? So yeah, project management is a thing. And surround yourself with, or not surround yourself, because yes, people are not necessarily the right thing, but don't be afraid to ask questions and look for people who are positive thinkers and ask yourself a lot of those questions. Very easy in engineering and construction to always think you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you come from, being an engineering technologist, being an engineer, you kind of get the idea as you go through school that you're expected to do things right. You made a mistake. Somebody's life could depend on that mistake, right? And recognize that you learn from those mistakes. Hopefully any mistake you make will not result in somebody's life being lost.
Well, yeah.
But you learn from that mistake.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to leave the world of project management and construction behind with before we get to plugs and where people can get in contact with you?
Never stop learning. I think that's the biggest thing. And look for opportunities to learn. Get involved. Do volunteer projects. Learning points come from a variety of sources, not just from courses, not just from books. Podcasts are a great source of information now. So I look at different ways of learning. I pick up podcasts and audiobooks on stuff I wouldn't normally read, because I'm thinking, oh gosh, I would never pick up a book of Winston Churchill's memoirs, for example. So I listen to it instead. And you learn about leadership by listening to people's biographies and then finding out what the true story is in the background and what they exaggerated and what they didn't.
Yeah.
Learn about that, right? So yeah, never stop learning.
Amazing. Well, Darya, where can people get in touch with you? Give a plug to Procept. Anything else that you want to talk about, just lay it out for us.
LinkedIn. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I post stuff every once in a while that I find interesting. I try not to bog people down with, oh, wow, look what I did this. Wow, look at this wonderful. Because at a certain point, people care, right? A lot of people do use LinkedIn for that. I don't. I really try and post stuff that is of interest to project people.
You post a lot of valuable stuff.
I hope so.
if people are looking, look out for the Parisian cappuccino with the little gold chocolate on the right-hand side.
Yeah, there's two, by the way. There's two Darya Dumas because I got onto LinkedIn in its very early days. And I can't figure out how to get rid of that first one. And it's got nothing on it. So you'll know very quickly that it's not me because there's no activity on it whatsoever. But with the cappuccino, that's the one you want to look for.
Perfect. And maybe if you get enough interest in your inbox, you'll change your profile picture to you.
Oh, gosh. You can find my profile picture anywhere else, including Procept's website. You don't need a picture. I don't want to look at my picture when I go on LinkedIn.
You know, I just have to say it one more time. Like, you sent me your headshot for this podcast, and you look like such a boss. You got your rings on.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And you're sitting there, and I'm like, I like this picture. This is a good one.
By the way, I'm not wearing my ring anymore.
Your pinky ring.
Yeah.
Your engineering ring.
Yeah.
Why?
I had to take it off because I went for an MRI, and I realized then that was the first time I was taking it off since I'm right-handed. I wear it on my left hand because we got our iron rings in those days before we wrote our final exams. And when I was writing my final exams, it was a huge irritant to me. You're writing and this thing is rubbing against the paper and I just, So I switched it to my left finger and I never moved it. Well, I gained a little weight since then. And I was trying to pull it off. I was going for an MRI for my knee and I was trying to pull it off. I managed to get it off, but of course I'm not even going to try putting it back on. So I have to get a new one. So I'm not wearing it anymore. But yeah. I'm so impressed that you think I look like, that was the image. It's fake entirely. I went to a professional studio.
Wow.
I told them, you tell me what I should wear and how I should look. And it was all them that did that.
But everybody's like that. Nobody's just showing up and getting this candid, awesome headshot. I just don't buy it. Nobody.
Okay.
So anyways,
well, I'm glad it works.
Anyways, where can people find out more about Procept and get in touch with them and anything else that you'd like to direct them to?
Yeah, if you send me a ping, I will send you to Procept. Is a very interesting company. We're always doing something new. Our boss is on the same mindset as mine, Kevin Aguano. He's always thinking, what can I do next that's new and different? What can I be involved in? And we all have, one of the things that's common to a lot of our instructors, we all have a passion for what we do. And we're all excited about what we do. So, yeah. And we all want to work with our clients. We're not always perfect, but we try real hard. So there you go.
You guys do a good job. I've learned it firsthand. And Darya, just thanks again for coming out here and spending some time with me and your downloads on the industry up to date. And I hope we can catch up again in the future. Yeah,
this is exciting stuff. Colin's doing a great job. We just started talking about this 10 years ago. I have to give a plug to Colin. When he said this to me, I said, finally, somebody's doing this. And you're doing it super professionally. I am so impressed with this. I cannot tell you how impressed I am with your professionalism and the way this is all set up and the way you've created your podcast. And so I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope this grows and provides a lot of value to young professionals in particular in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Tools of the Trade podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. For show notes, blog posts, resources, and access to our newsletter, check out toolspodcast.com.